Bitcoin is currently one of the most successful cryptocurrencies in the world. With one Bitcoin valued at over $57,000 US dollars, the cryptocurrency is quickly making its way to achieve the status of mainstream currency, directly putting itself into competition with fiat money. But even after all of this, the face behind Bitcoin still remains a mystery. In this video, we're going to tell you who the founder of Bitcoin is and why they chose to remain anonymous. Bitcoin was found all the way back in October 2008, and the way that this cryptocurrency entered the mainstream domain is a story on its own. One of the most intriguing mysteries behind the world's most successful cryptocurrency is the fact that nobody really knows how it came into existence and who was the force behind it all. It all happened when someone called Satoshi Nakamoto published a paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. At the same time, the domain of bitcoin.org was also registered to Satoshi Nakamoto. A few cryptographers debated whether the paper was legitimate or not, but they soon came to an agreement that even if Bitcoin entered the public domain, there wasn't much chance of it actually being successful. However, all of their doubts were put to rest when in January 2009, this person called Nakamoto mined the first block of the Bitcoin ledger and brought the network into existence. But what is a Bitcoin ledger? Well, to keep it simple, Bitcoin works through blockchain technology, which consists of a public ledger on which the entire Bitcoin network relies. All confirmed transactions are included in this ledger. This ledger maintains a record of all Bitcoin transactions while keeping the identities of Bitcoin holders completely anonymous. For a transaction to be verified, a huge part of this network of Bitcoin holders needs to add these records to the ledger through a process called mining. To securely add to the blockchain ledger, Bitcoin mining computers solve complex mathematical problems. When a solution is found, the latest block of confirmed transactions is added as the next link in the blockchain. Now, Nakamoto was the first person who came up with the idea of using blockchain technology for currency. But because this was a relatively new idea, the launch of Bitcoin was pretty quiet. In January, Nakamoto published the first version of Bitcoin and its blockchain software to a site called Sauerceforge, where developers had the ability to share open sources software. Nakamoto ended up mining the first 50 Bitcoins himself, and soon, people started jumping on the bandwagon. The reason why Nakamoto decided to work on Bitcoin was simple. He believed that internet transactions were inconvenient, considering how you would have to use third-party apps to just send money. He wanted people to be able to swap cash online just as simply as they would do it in person. This resulted in his electronic payment system that worked on cryptographic proof, allowing any two parties to exchange money without the need of a third party. Nakamoto knew that it would take people a while to catch up, but he knew that blockchain technology would be faster and safer than anything else on the market, and the resources it would free up would create the limitless potential for both banks and governments. Best of all, mining would keep Bitcoin decentralized, democratic, and safe from malicious attacks. Millions of investors then went on to believe in Nakamoto's motivation behind the creation of Bitcoin, raising its value to an all-time high in 2020. Keeping his identity anonymous, Satoshi Nakamoto then started working with a bunch of developers around the world, including Marty E. Malmi in Finland and Gavin Anderson in America. While working with Nakamoto, these developers realized that Nakamoto was a genius who had made sure that there were absolutely no clues leading back to his real identity. In his business dealings, Nakamoto made sure not to reveal any details that would help people figure out who he really was, which led people to believe that the creator of Bitcoin really had no interest in being discovered. In fact, before Nakamoto quit Bitcoin, he actually went and removed his name from the copyright claim in the software and left all the code to Bitcoin developers. But why does he want his identity to remain a secret? Well, while there are a bunch of speculations around that idea, let's talk about the most famous and most probable one. Nakamoto's identity is essential to the Bitcoin system. Of course, this is because he's the founder of the currency. But that's not all. Nakamoto also owns a fortune in Bitcoin. People believe that the owner of Bitcoin currently holds over 1 million coins, which are valued at over $55 billion right now. Now, considering that only 21 million Bitcoins will ever be mined, Nakamoto's personal stash and how he plans to use them can significantly affect the entire ecosystem. While Nakamoto has been quiet for a while, if his identity is ever revealed, it will lead to huge changes in the price of cryptocurrency. But that's not the worst part. People are more worried if something happens to Nakamoto before his identity is ever revealed. Because all bitcoins are tied to complex encryption keys, if Nakamoto dies before revealing his identity or giving someone else the key, all of his bitcoins will be inaccessible forever. Nakamoto's last message to the public came in 2011 when he announced that he was moving on to other things. He handed over the source code for Bitcoin's blockchain technology to Gavin Anderson, who is a lead developer for the Bitcoin project. And then, Nakamoto disappeared for good. However, in 2012, in a public profile, Nakamoto himself revealed that he was a 37-year-old Japanese man. But nobody bought that, since he had never conversed or written anything in Japanese. Most people think that this was a red herring to throw people off from discovering the real identity. Around the same time, a photo of a man started making rounds and people believed that that was Satoshi Nakamoto. In 2014, after a 2-year investigation, Newsweek journalist Lee McGrath Goodman felt confident she'd tracked down the real Satoshi Nakamoto. His real name was Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto, a then 64-year-old Japanese-American man living in California. This was the most high-profile attempt to try and discover Nakamoto's identity. However, Dorian Nakamoto went on record and said that even though he shared a name with the person, he definitely wasn't the founder of Bitcoin, putting a rest to all rumors. However, a lot of people still believe that Dorian is the man behind it all. Only a year later, an Australian scientist named Craig Wright claimed that he was Satoshi Nakamoto. Wright appeared at a Bitcoin investors conference via Skype, and that's where he revealed his identity. The proofs included a cryptography paper written on Wright's blog months before the Bitcoin paper was published, a bunch of emails and transcripts where Wright is seen talking about how he is the owner of Bitcoin, trying to keep his identity a secret. However, there were several inconsistencies in Wright's stories, and his blogs and emails were proven to have been backdated, along with the public encryption keys that he claimed were Nakamoto's. Even Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin publicly called Wright a fraud, which laid to rest any speculation of him being the real Nakamoto. People also believe that a cryptographer called Nick Szabo can be the man behind the operation. This is because Szabo designed the architecture for a decentralized digital currency called Bitgold prior to the launch of Bitcoin. Though the architecture was never set to motion, there are similarities to Bitcoin's design which have led people to think that he might be the face behind Satoshi Nakamoto. To this day, there have been tons of speculations about who Satoshi Nakamoto really is. These theories range from a secretive government agency, programmer and cartel boss Paul LaRue, and even Elon Musk. However, there is no concrete evidence to actually prove that any of these people are the force behind Bitcoin. Is Nakamoto a man, a woman, or a group of people? No one can really say. But whoever he is, there's no doubt that this person is definitely a computer genius to have been able to achieve what he did. And while the identity of the founder of Bitcoin still remains a mystery, what's important is that the system is still functioning without his involvement. Maybe people don't even need to know who the face behind Bitcoin is. Why? Well, because the creator of Bitcoin is anonymous, people are able to direct their focus on the breakthrough technology itself, which is what truly defines Bitcoin.